The first batch of Orlando Magic games are here, and they matter more than you think. Plus, the Magic have a new home today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is August 12th. It will be August 13th, 2026, scheduled day in the NBA. My name is Philip Rossreich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the Orlando Magic have a new TV home. I'll explain and tell you all you need to know about where to watch the Orlando Magic this year, why the NBA Cup still matters, but I want to start with the basics of who the Magic are playing in the NBA Cup. We've known this since early July. It got announced like July 4th, July 5th, somewhere in there. We've known that the Magic were going to play the Toronto Raptors, Milwaukee Bucks, Brooklyn Nets, Detroit Pistons. We knew where they were going to play these games. At Toronto, at Brooklyn, home versus Milwaukee, home versus Detroit. But at this point, you should know the format. The NBA teams are split into three groups of five by conference. It's based on where they finished the previous season. You play the four other teams within your group. Team with the best record advances, one wild card advances. We all know the game. The Magic have been one of the best NBA Cup teams in the league, consistently putting themselves in position to advance to the knockout rounds in each of the three iterations of this tournament, including the last 2 years, including going to the semifinals of the NBA Cup last season in Las Vegas, where they lost to the eventual champion, the eventual NBA Cup champion, the eventual double champion, New York Knicks. The Orlando Magic will open their NBA Cup game, and these are the first games we have confirmed on the Magic's NBA calendar, NBA schedule. They will open the NBA Cup. They'll open their NBA Cup schedule October 30th in Toronto against the Toronto Raptors. They'll come back home to play the Milwaukee Bucks on November 13th. They will travel to Brooklyn to play the Brooklyn Nets on November 20th, and they will be home on November 24th to play the Detroit Pistons. Just like the first year of the NBA Cup, the Orlando Magic finished their NBA Cup schedule before everyone else in their group. The Pistons will play, I believe it is the Bucks or the Nets in their second game, are in their final game on Friday, I want to say. I haven't got the whole NBA Cup schedule memorized yet. But the Magic will be the first in the clubhouse in East Group A. And as we remember, 3 years ago now, the Orlando Magic went 3-1, losing to the Brooklyn Nets in their first game, but beating the Boston Celtics in a huge upset on Black Friday, and had to watch the Boston Celtics defeat the Chicago Bulls by 30-plus points to advance and knock the Magic out of the tournament. Last year, of course, Orlando went 4-0, sweeping through the teams, beating, I believe it was Brooklyn, Detroit, Boston, and Philadelphia. Really solid win in that group and a sign for the early season. I'll explain why the NBA Cup is important in a minute. But I want to reiterate something that I'm sure I mentioned yesterday, that the game that I am looking forward to most, the game that I have it circled on my calendar, even if it didn't have a date, is that November 24th game against the Detroit Pistons. To me, that first game at the Kia Center against the Pistons was going to be the most important game of the early season. No matter when it happened, it was going to be the most important game of the season. Because it is about exorcising demons. The NBA is beautiful. Like, the schedule is about as perfectly constructed as it can be. You're going to play everybody in the league at least once. You're going to play everybody in the league at least twice, actually. You know you're going to get that opportunity to prove yourself against the best teams in the league. It is a big deal when the Oklahoma City Thunder come to town, when the San Antonio Spurs come to town, when the New York Knicks come to town. Still a big deal when the Miami Heat come to town. It is a big deal to see these best teams. And especially for up-and-coming teams, to measure yourselves against them. I don't know what your fandom is like, but when I was growing up, and the schedule came out every year, one of the first things that I looked for and looked at was, when do the Magic play the team that beat them in the playoffs? Was I a little vengeful kid? Yeah, a little bit. I'm still not over the Rockets. I still don't like the Rockets. 95 was scarring and dramatic. No one likes the Lakers. Was I a little vengeful on that? Sure. But to me, it was about just saying, okay, yeah, we lost that playoff series, but we're better this year. We are capable, or we are proving to ourselves that we can beat you on any given night. That series, yes, it's done. It's in the past. You move forward, but that series is the blip. And moving forward, we are the ones taking care of business. It is, look, I think most on the Magic have probably moved on. Nobody is necessarily thinking about what happened in Game 6. Nobody is necessarily thinking about that moment and that failure anymore. That's not how I think professional athletes think. They're pretty good about moving on and putting things in the past. I'm still thinking about it. And whether it's consciously or subconsciously, I think that it's going to be impossible for the Magic to move on and be the best version of themselves until they exorcise these demons. The first time the Magic take a 20-point lead this season, there's going to be doubt. Can we hold on to this lead? That every team in the NBA has a run. You're up by 20, and all of a sudden that team cuts it down to 10. Like, how's this team going to respond? It's going to be impossible not to dread that moment again. What happens when the Magic go through their first scoring drought? It's going to happen to everybody. 82 games is a long time. You're going to have some bad nights. But how do you respond? Do you keep that lead? Do you kind of grind your way out? Or does it metastasize into something worse? I said this, I'm pretty sure I said this the night of Game 6, and I've said this since, but what happened in Game 6 was not surprising. It was surprising the depth of how bad it got. You know, no one expects to score 19 points in a half. Nobody expects to go 45 minutes of actual time without a field goal. Nobody expects to lose a 24-point lead at home in a closeout game. But none of it was surprising because the Magic had done a lot of those things or something similar throughout the season. The 17-0 run to the Rockets, the 32-0 run to the Raptors, the blown lead to Houston, the kind of blowout and lifeless defensive efforts where the Magic's poor offense finally just cracked their defense. Things that seemed incomprehensible earlier in the season, but was very of character for last year. The bottom line is the Magic are not ever going to live down what happened in Game 6 until they win a playoff series. It's going to be a stink, and it's going to be a question that they will have to answer, and it is unavoidable until it's no longer the issue. Until they win that series and take that all-important next step. And the first place that that's going to happen is November 24th, a Tuesday night in Orlando. Most likely the Pistons' first trip back to the Kia Center since Game 6. A place where they'll probably feel really confident. A place where they'll feel like, we got this team. We're kind of in their heads now. Yeah, they worked us a little bit in the first half of the series, but we came out on top. We're the young team to watch, not Orlando. That's what that series represented. And Orlando spent its entire offseason saying, no, wait a second. When we're healthy, we're better than you. We showed that very clearly. Well, the beautiful thing about sports is you can prove that on the court. It's hard to say any game in the first quarter of the season is super important. Like, look, I believe in it. Every game is important. Every minute is important. There's clutch minutes aren't that big of a thing. They're bigger in the playoffs than they are in the regular season when the sample sizes are smaller. We know every game is going to be important, and there isn't time to ease your way into the season. Every game is going to matter, especially these games against your direct competition. And even if the Pistons are fighting for the 1 seed, they are direct competition for the Orlando Magic. We should know after last season how vital tiebreakers are. The Magic tied the Sixers. They didn't finish behind the Sixers. They tied them. Sixers won the tiebreaker. The Magic lost the tiebreaker to every single team in the Eastern Conference playoffs. That's why they finished 8th as much as anything. They got to win these games. But emotionally, cathartically, and just for confidence sake, sending the Pistons packing from the NBA Cup, beating them in a game with stakes again. For whatever you want to call the NBA Cup, they are stakes, whether you want them or not. Beating them in that situation is going to propel the Magic forward. And that's why this game, November 24th, 7 p.m., Kia Center. Be there, Thanksgiving week. Be there, be loud, be ready. I want that to be a playoff atmosphere because in all likelihood, that's going to be the Magic's chance to get out of the, to win the group. You know, who knows what's going to happen with Toronto, but the Toronto game's big too. Like all these games are big, but the Magic have every chance to win this group and be successful in the NBA Cup because they are a tough matchup for the Pistons still. And this game's going to mean a lot to them and set the tone for much of the rest of the season. Because the NBA Cup matters. I make my argument coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get the chance to make your prediction before the first pitch. Look, there are certain players where every at-bat feels like something big could happen. His name is Junior Caminero. That's what makes Daily Dingers fun. You get to back the player you think is ready to go deep that day. Now, don't pick the Rays because they're off on Thursday coming back from that 9-0 West Coast road trip. Get in on the action today if you're ready to play. Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. I know you don't want to hear me talk about the NBA Cup. Some of you don't. Some of you are just not buying into this thing, and that's okay. I don't think the entire league is fully bought into this. I think generally, and this is sort of what I expected, and I think it's still the case. The early games of the NBA Cup are like kind of meh. We're just kind of working on ourselves, thinking about ourselves. It happens really early in the season, about 2 weeks into the season, kind of catches some teams by surprise, and it definitely doesn't have juice yet. It's a new tradition. It's a new thing. It's certainly made for TV. We can all agree it's a ploy for some money and attention. Not everybody's bought in, and that's okay. You may not be bought in as a fan. You may think this is stupid and don't care. I'll tell you this, though. These guys are competitive. If you tell them there's a trophy and there's a winner and there's a loser, when it becomes real that trophy is on the line, everybody starts to care. That's why the knockout rounds are still some of the best drama and best basketball we see all year. It's why that game against the Miami Heat at the Kia Center was so much fun and so cool. That's why going to Vegas and playing the Knicks in that game, even if the atmosphere was kind of dead because it was an afternoon game, it was an weird afternoon game and all that. that was still something exciting. That was still something fun and something cool. And certainly that Thunder Spurs game in Vegas was intense, just like the Knicks Spurs game in the final was super intense and super good basketball. I make it no secret on this podcast, hashtag we respect the cup. I think the NBA Cup has been a great thing. Yes, I am a soccer fan. I am used to and enjoy in-season tournaments. I think the NBA could do some tweaks and make this a little bit better. I think that even though this was designed to be an early season tournament and get attention on the league in November and December, I think there are some tweaks they could make for it to be even better. But at the end of the day, this is what the purpose of the NBA Cup is. It is to give teams who are trying to be up and coming, to give them some pressure experience. The NBA Cup is really what you make of it. And even though the Magic have been to the playoffs a few times, even though the Magic have had success in the NBA Cup, and I don't think we should question their credentials to win big games in this setting, it's still really good practice for them. And it's especially good practice because they have a new coach. The NBA Cup still matters to a team like the Orlando Magic because they are still trying to learn how to win. Now, certainly they're closer. Certainly they're better than they were 3 years ago. Certainly, there was some motivation. There's a lot of familiarity with Jamal Mosley, especially, that enabled them to be more prepared to play bigger games earlier in the season. I don't know how Sean Sweeney feels about the NBA Cup. I'm excited to ask him that in late October. And be like, how are you approaching these cup games? Like, what do you think of it? You were in this last year. You got to the finals last year. What do you think of this thing? Jamal Mosley was all in on it. And especially because the Magic were so young when it started, them competing and playing well in this tournament were valuable lessons. The Magic don't need those lessons as much anymore, but they need results. They need proof of concept. Who knows? Last year was an anomaly among the 3 NBA Cups. Last year, 3 of the 4 eventual conference finalists, with the Magic being the only team, made it to the semifinals of the NBA Cup. The finals matchup was the NBA Cup championship game. Now, that was not the case. But the Indiana Pacers certainly used the NBA Cup as a launching pad for their trips deeper into the playoffs, as did the Oklahoma City Thunder. And while the Milwaukee Bucks and Los Angeles Lakers, the first 2 winners of the NBA Cup, were 8 seeds and did not live up to their potential, it was still a nice little feather in the cap to have Giannis Antetokounmpo win one more trophy with the Bucks, or have LeBron James win one more trophy with the Lakers. Trophies are trophies. Don't knock them. You still have to win them, whatever the competition is. But it's less about winning the trophy for me. It's more about a team coming together and experiencing success. Like I said, I don't know what the state of the Orlando Magic is going to be. I don't know if Sean Sweeney's going to emphasize this thing, or if he's going to be worried about other things and saying, like, we need to work on this stuff, or we need this to happen the way we need it to happen. I don't know what his emphasis is going to be at this juncture of the season. But I will say this. A big reason why I am so focused on the start of this season, we're going to talk about what the start of the season looks like when the schedule comes out tomorrow, Thursday. A big reason why I am so focused on what the start of the season looks like for this team is because it's about buy-in. It's because we are looking to see, what do the Magic look like? What is a Sean Sweeney team? What can it do? What does it do? How does it act? How does it play? How does it respond to pressure? And while the regular season provides plenty of pressure, and certainly you have to look at the long game as much as you have to look at the short term, the NBA Cup does create stakes. You can go in and say, hey, we're trying to win this thing. How do you respond when it's a must-win game? That November 24th game, not only facing the demons of your playoff failures the previous year, but you probably need that game to give yourself a chance to advance, whether it's to win the group outright at 4-0 or to get to 3-1 and give yourself a fighting chance. How does a team respond under pressure? That's what the Magic failed at last year. Last year, when the going got tough for the Orlando Magic, while they had more comebacks from 10 or more points than any team in the league, more comeback wins from down 10 or more points of any team in the league last year, a lot of times when the going got tough last year, the team quit. Just plain and simple. You don't lose by 50 points if the team's playing hard. You don't lose by 30 points if the team is playing hard. These are NBA players. They're too good for that. And like I said, Game 6 was a byproduct of a lot of failures and a lot of catastrophes inherent in the Magic that just kind of coalesced at the worst time. And that's what the playoffs expose. The NBA Cup matters because we need to see this team under pressure. We need to see how this team responds. We need to see, and potentially even early on in the season, whether they believe in this new vision for their team, whether they believe in what Sean Sweeney is preaching. And how they answer that question will answer so much more. The NBA Cup absolutely matters. It absolutely means so much to who this team is trying to be and what they're trying to accomplish. It's proof of concept of the direction they are headed. I say this a lot. I am a believer in the NBA Cup. Give me a trophy. I want my team to win it. It is not about winning the trophy because that is not the goal. It is a goal. It's a goal along the way. The goal is to win the big gold trophy at the end of the season. And what you want out of the NBA Cup is to understand, where are we on that process? What tweaks do we need to be ready for the big game at the end? Because anybody can lose a game. That's the beauty of single elimination tournaments. And that's why I think it is good to have this competition in there. It's a different kind of competition. It creates upsets. It creates some interesting matchups. It gives new blood some exposure, like the Magic got last year. But the NBA Cup still matters for this team's development. And I want to see them go for it. And I think the pathway is set up for them to do so. The Magic did get lucky. Milwaukee and Brooklyn are considered two of the three teams in the East that are not going to make the playoffs this year. They're still tough. Don't get me wrong. Brooklyn's given them plenty of problems in the Cup before. Needed a crazy Franz Wagner finish last year to beat them. They beat the Magic 3 years ago and kind of a shocking loss where the Magic, weren't as serious as they needed to be about that game. Something that they said helped them and taught them a lesson moving forward. Toronto, we don't know what Toronto is with or without Kawhi Leonard. Very tough game. Don't get me wrong. Playing at Toronto is going to be very, very tough. And Detroit's still a very tough team. But the Magic can beat both of these teams. The Magic can go 4-0, and I expect them to go 3-1. I expect them to find a way to go 3-1. 2-2, you're out. 2-2 wouldn't shock me, but the Magic are very capable of winning this group. And you want to start shocking people? Do it in November. Put the early warning out. We'll see what the Magic ultimately do in the Cup. The news that Magic fans have been waiting for, the details on the Magic's new TV home, coming up here in just a moment. It has quietly been one of the big questions for the Orlando Magic all offseason. Where are the Magic going to put their games on TV? As everyone's probably aware by now, FanDuel Sports Network no longer exists. They were owned by this company called Main Street Sports. They went through bankruptcy, couldn't pay their bills, lost all their MLB teams before this season. That's why the Rays are on the channel they're on. They lost all their NHL teams before their season. They prioritized the NBA, and they still shut down. And so the 13 teams that were still on FanDuel had to go out and find new homes. And the Magic, like many of these teams, there's a few that didn't do this, but like many of these teams, have indeed found a new over-the-air home for their games. On Wednesday, the Orlando Magic, along with Cox Media Group, announced that the Orlando Magic have partnered with WFTV Channel 9 and WRDQ Channel 27 to air the entire Orlando Magic season on over-the-air networks. The Magic will play most of their games on WRDQ Channel 27. That'll be Channel 10 on Spectrum, which is available over the air, which means you do not need cable to access it. In fact, the most important thing to stress is all non-nationally televised Orlando Magic games, which will be aired on local TV, are completely free to watch if you're in Orlando or in the Central Florida area. Partnerships with TV stations across Central and North Florida will be announced shortly. I've had people ask me who they're going to partner with Tampa. I don't know. They have, or at least a station in Jacksonville has announced that they're partnering with the Magic. Action Sports Jacksonville, I believe, is the station, channel 47.2 in Jacksonville. That is also available over the air, completely free in Jacksonville. I had someone ask me about Tallahassee. The Magic have previously aired in Tallahassee. I suspect that they will partner with a station in Tallahassee. They'll partner with a station in Gainesville. I don't think Gainesville is in Channel 9's area. But essentially, sit tight. If you're not in Orlando, you will have access to Orlando Magic basketball. And for the first time, it will be completely free. No Sunshine Network, no Sun Sports, no FanDuel, no Bally, no Fox Sports Network. No cable necessary. If you are on YouTube TV, in Orlando at least, WFTV Channel 9 and WRDQ Channel 27 are also streaming on YouTube TV. You will not need to do anything extra. If you are outside of the Orlando area, the Orlando Magic said that they will be announcing a direct-to-consumer streaming option to fans very, very soon. It has been rumored for a little while now that DAZN, D-A-Z-N, is scooping up all the streaming rights to all the FanDuel teams. DAZN has a nice little infrastructure. I've toyed around with the app a little bit. They bought Courtside 1891, which is the FIBA streaming platform, but so much better than Courtside 1891. Courtside 1891 was trash. No app on Apple TV. It was a mess. Very good. I am very, very happy with DAZN so far. DAZN's mostly known for showing combat sports. They do a lot of international sports, but they have a good kind of base and a good streaming system. I think that will be a good home if you're looking to stream the Magic. That will be a separate cost and a separate subscription, though. If you want the Magic, so there is a potential cost for this. But if you want the Magic for free, if you're living in Central and North Florida, you will be able to get the Magic for free on the over-the-air station that they are airing on. This is the direction that everything seemed to be going for a little while, because it's been sort of predicted for the last 3 years that FanDuel was going to go under. But this is obviously just a humongous win for Orlando Magic fans, a humongous win for basketball fans in general, because it's happening at almost every turn. Like the Charlotte Hornets announced their streaming deal today. Most of the teams are kind of following suit and following this same pattern that the Magic have followed. And this is just a trend of the league this summer is to kind of go in this path of over the air. Again, completely free. All you would need if you don't have cable is some type of antenna receiver. There's digital antenna receivers that, pick up the signal over the air, and you just have to kind of scan and find the channel. There are straight rabbit ear antennas that will also do the trick. All of this is available for free. Now, any game that is on national TV, ESPN, Prime Video, NBC, Peacock, NBC games will obviously be still on over the air because that's a network channel. Those you'll have to find a way to watch. And again, we'll find out tomorrow how many national TV games the Magic get. I'm anticipating 10. I'm beginning to downgrade maybe to 9, but I think it'll be 10 or 11 national TV games. Magic got 14 last year. I think they'll get a decrease, but not a super significant one. So most Magic games will be available for free. And obviously, because if there's 10 games that are on national TV, 72 will be on the local network. So the majority of Magic games will be available for free next year. And obviously, this is a win. The Magic have not been on a broadcast channel since they were on WRBW channel 65. Way back in the day, in the early days of the Magic television network, it was WKCF channel 18, which is now CW 18. owned by the Hearst Group, which owns Wesh. They were on that network way back in the day in the 90s. I believe they made the switch permanently to Fox Sports Florida in, I want to say, the mid 2000s, like 2004, 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. And that's when they went fully on cable. So it's been 20 years. It's been more than almost 2 decades, most likely, since the Magic were available on an over-the-air network. Now, I was told not to call it the Magic Television Network. That was a very different setup and a very different situation, where the games were split between what was then called Sunshine Network or Sun Sports and the Magic Television Network, which was an over-the-air kind of affiliated network where that had mostly road games. Most of the home games were on Sunshine Network back in the day. All the road games were very easily available as a way to kind of maybe control and get people to come out to games. Instead of blocking people out, you put it on cable. Not everyone had cable at the time. That was that kind of deal. But it's been a long time since the Magic have been this accessible. And so, again, I have seen everybody that I have talked to among fans are very, very excited about this. I think it's a great thing. The broadcast is going to be produced by the Magic, so it's going to have a lot of the same feel of the broadcast from FanDuel Sports Network Florida. Obviously, Dante Marcatelli takes over the play-by-play desk, but he will be joined once again by Jeff Turner as the color analyst, as well as Kendra Douglas on sideline and hosting duties. WFTV and WRDQ will also produce their own pre- and post-game show, and WFTV is also going to add exclusive content as well and some special programming too. So it'll feel very much like it felt on. I don't think, honestly, there's going to be much of a, there'll be a visual change, obviously, because they'll get a new graphics package, but I don't think there will be much that changes in how the broadcast feels and the kind of content you get from the Magic's broadcast. It's going to be pretty seamless. Now, obviously, David Steele retired. That's obviously a big change for the Magic and their television and their television broadcast, but how the Magic broadcast feels, I don't think is going to be significantly different. And that is, it's just more accessible. I know a lot of people complain about the FanDuel Sports app. I got a lot of those complaints. I'm like, I can't help you there, bud. I watch the games I have cable. I watch the games on cable. I know that frustrated people endlessly. People are still asking me a lot, what are the streaming options? That's going to be announced at a later date, but a huge win for basketball fans, huge win for Magic fans to have the games available on over-the-air, on an over-the-air broadcast network. And hopefully it means we are in for a fun season and not a lot of disappointment on that front. But certainly more people will be able to watch Magic basketball than ever before. And that is ultimately a very good thing. But we are waiting for what the schedule is going to be for the Orlando Magic, and we will get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, because that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the places along the podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub, or join the Everydayer Club at LockedOnMagic.supercast.com. As I mentioned, there are going to be some changes coming to the Everydayer Club. There are going to be some changes coming to the Patreon page. So stay tuned for that. We're still working on some things on the back end, but stay tuned for that. We'll be announcing those very, very shortly. And as always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day, go and make your next listen the Locked On NBA podcast, because there is no offseason. Wes, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll be back tomorrow to break down the Magic's entire 2026-2027 schedule. The start, the finish, the road trips, the big stretches, the big moments, and where the Magic could hit some trouble. We'll get to all of that and more on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.